Hello and welcome to my channel. This is my very first YouTube video and I'm sure I'm gonna bust up laughing at myself later on down the road, just like I did when I first started my Instagram. Basically here, what I really wanted to do is make longer videos. If you're here from my Instagram, let me know below. There is so much more that I can share about and that I could talk about in longer videos to explain more, but Instagram Reels only gives you the option for like 90 seconds at most. So what we're gonna be doing specifically today is what you notice is in the grocery store like massively amounts right now. It's cranberries, right? Cranberries, people just think, oh, it's like a yummy like Christmas thing. It is so much more than that. They are super medicinal and you could do so many things with them. So I literally bought as many as I could get, and I may or may not have accidentally got into some already to make some sourdough scones. So let's get right into the medicinal benefits of cranberry. So one of the first things that people think of when they think of cranberry when it comes to medicinal purposes is for bladder infections. But why is that? Have you ever heard of the supplement called D-mannose? Basically what that supplement is it's for urinary and bladder support, and I think kidney support too, and it basically makes a coating in the bladder so that the typical bacteria E. coli, which is associated with bladder infections, cannot stick to the inside of the bladder and cause an infection. That simple sugar is found in cranberries, and so that is where that comes from. The problem is the majority of people, when they think, oh my gosh, I've got a bladder infection, I got a kidney infection, I need cranberries, like immediately, is they go to the store and they go get that cocktail stuff. That is not it. That is not only highly processed, but it's loaded with sugar, and it's like, it's not gonna work. So if you ever tried like store-bought cranberry juice, it's literally the cocktail stuff for a bladder infection, it didn't work. It's because of the kind that it was. So that's the very first thing, is it treats and prevents UTIs and supports the kidneys. It's also highly anti-inflammatory and rich in antioxidants. And the reason that this is so important, especially when it comes to UTIs, is because if you've had one before, you know that it's inflammation, like it's painful, you can feel it. So anything to tone that down is a good thing. Further to that, it actually helps with digestion and prevents cavities and treats gum disease and does so many things. The reason that it's anti-cancer though is because of this specific chemical compound that cranberries contain. Please don't ask me to pronounce it because I will butcher it. Cranberries also support the heart and are really good for heart health. In return, help with high blood pressure and just strengthening the heart in general. So it's really an amazing little berry. These can be eaten raw, but they are mega tart. And I am telling you, if you ever ate one of them Sour Patch Kids or them like warhead things, it's worse than that. I kid you not. So if you want something super sour for a candy alternative for your kids, try that, because it's literally so sour that I tried to eat one raw. I can't. I literally can't. It's so sour. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to make some cranberry juice with a really simple method, because I do not like to overcomplicate things, and some people will make cranberry juice and like they'll simmer it down first and they'll make a concentrate. You know what? You could do that. If you want to do that, that is cool, but I do not want to do that. That takes too much time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally place the cranberries right in the jar, and I'm going to water bath can it. And the great thing about water bath canning is that you do not need any special equipment. And that, if you are here from my Instagram, you know that that is my motto. I want to teach self-sufficient skills without special equipment, because one, our ancestors probably didn't have special equipment, and two, inflation is here. Nobody has the money to go out and buy massive amounts of special equipment. Am I right or am I right? So I'm going to show you how you can water bath can this easily with no special equipment. Is the only thing that you need is a stock pot. If you got a stock pot, we got this. So let's head to the kitchen and I'll show you exactly what to do. An important thing to remember is not everything can be water bath canned. Cranberries can, because they're super acidic. Things like jellies, jams, like strawberry jam and, you know, blackberry jelly or like whatever it might be, tomatoes, salsa, those can safely be water bath canned. Things like meats, stews, and root vegetables like carrots, potatoes cannot be safely water bath canned. So the first thing that I like to do is I just like to put my cranberries in a clean bowl or a pot like I'm using here. And sprinkle in some baking soda right on top. Immediately after, I pour in white vinegar all the way till the top, and it gets nice and bubbly. And the point of this is really just to get them nice and clean. Then I just kind of sort through and pick out the ones that are bruised or rotten or just mushed in general, and I throw them out because we do not want that in our juice. Then I just give them a good rinse with cold water because we don't want any of that baking soda, vinegar residue left on our berries that will get in our juice. When water bath canning, there are a few things that you're going to need to know that are super important, okay? So when I said any type of stock pot, I am so serious. This is my childhood stock pot that my mom literally gave me. So much soup was made in this pot. I think that she actually got this from Costco. It's stainless steel, but it's totally going to work. And then you're just going to need a lid that is safe to be heated up to high temperatures. So obviously, this is going to be a stainless steel or glass lid will be fine for this. But there's a few things that you're going to also need to make sure of. So depending on how big of a jar that you're going to use for making your cranberry juice, it needs to fit in here on the rack, but also have about an inch headspace to be able to boil, because when you're water bath canning, you don't start the timer until it's at a rolling boil. So it's like an aggressive boil. So you need to make sure that your pot is big enough. So this usually fits pints for me, but just make sure that whatever pot you're going to use, like I said, that it will fit and that the appropriate headspace is there. I have also been canning for 2 years now, and I've yet to buy one of them fancy little racks that sits in there. You know what I do? Mason jar lids or rings. I just place these in there because the point is you need something that is going to keep your jars off of the bottom of the pot. I mean, it needs to be something that's lifting. It can't be like a rag, but I literally will just place these in here like this, and it gives it enough of a lift to where the jars are not touching the bottom. I learned that from Joe Winger on the Prairie Homestead. Then you're left with something that looks like this. The next thing that we're going to do that is literally so important, do not skip this step, is we're going to check to make sure that there are no cracks or nicks or anything in our jars before we sterilize them. So I just washed mine really well with soapy water, but that's not quite enough. We do need to sterilize them, but first we're going to check to make sure that there aren't any cracks or anything that could basically, it will mess with the seal, and then the food could go bad, and you don't want that. The way that I like to do this is I just like to grab a paper towel, and I like to go like this around the rim, because if it snags, there's a nick or a crack. I don't want to use my bare finger because if I could possibly cut myself. So I just do this to all of my jars just to confirm, and then I just do a little, basically examine it and make sure that there's no cracks in the jar. If there isn't, it's good to go to be sterilized. Okay, everything is all good, no issues there. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna fill up my stock pot with water, and I'm gonna place the jars in there, put the lid on, and I'm gonna bring it to a boil for about 10 minutes to sanitize them. If you have a dishwasher, you can run them through the sanitation cycle on your dishwasher. I don't have a dishwasher, and for those who don't, it's totally okay. Just do it this way, it works just fine. This is also going to be helpful too, because we're gonna be pouring boiling hot water into these jars after the sanitation process with the cranberries. We do not want to pour boiling hot water in a jar that is cold because it can shatter, and that would be a hot mess. Some canners also swear by adding a splash of white vinegar into your stock pot water because it can prevent the jars from getting cloudy. So that is also an option, and I often do that, and I do notice a difference. For the sake of this video, I really wanted to show you that it could be done without special equipment. So I'm using tongs here, but I do find the canning tongs very, very helpful. So if you did decide that you did want to purchase some canning supplies so that it was easier for you, I do have a link to my Amazon storefront in the description where you can pick out the exact one that I have that I absolutely love. That last clip there, I did have to add some more water because it was not full enough. This is really what you want your jars to look like. And then you're just gonna place the lid over and allow it to heat up and come to a rolling boil. While those jars are sterilizing in the water bath canner for about 10 minutes, I'm just going to go grab some filtered water and get it prepped and boiling so that we can put it in the jars with the cranberries. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes and these jars are mad hot. Be sure when you take the lid off that you take it away from yourself and you stand far away so you don't get burnt. All I'm doing now is I'm carefully taking out each jar and making sure that I pour the water back into the stock pot before putting it on a towel. You really want to make sure that you don't put your cold jar on the cold counter because the change in temperature can make your jar shatter, so make sure that you have some sort of barrier. Also, it's really important that all the equipment that you're going to use, like this funnel or the measuring cup that I'm using or whatever, is super clean and sterilized as well. To each pint-sized jar, I'm adding in half a cup of the cranberries and then 1/8 of a cup of sugar. But the sugar is optional. It just really tones down that tartness, but you can leave it out if you would like. And because I know somebody will have this question, I have no idea if a sugar alternative like honey or maple syrup would work in this. You could possibly use stevia though, but I have never tried it, so I can't guarantee the end result. You're just going to add in that boiling filtered water that you heated up earlier and leave about 1 inch headspace. This is really important because those cranberries are going to swell and they're going to split open and release the juices. And so if you have too much liquid in there, it literally is going to pop the top right off. At this point, I'm just using a butter knife to debubble and push down the cranberries to confirm that there are no bubbles in here. Bubbles are literally a canner's worst nightmare. Before we move on to the next part, I really want to talk about the lids real quick. So, some people say that you can reuse canning lids. Some people say you cannot. I will say I know a lot of Amish people that reuse their lids, but I do know that it's recommended to not according to the people who regulate home canning safety. So I will personally be using new lids. You are able to reuse the bands. So you can reuse your rings. You cannot reuse these. Also, a lot of people will boil these so that they sterilize them as well. But the way that I was taught was to not boil them because it can melt the rubber around. I was taught to wash them very, very well with hot soapy water and then allow them to sit out and air dry and to not do the boiling. So do not come for me. Do it how you want. That's just how I was taught because I was told that the way that they make these lids these days is not the same as they made it in the old days, and that the old days the band or the rubber could withstand the boil, but now they can't. So I don't know. That's just what I do. So I'm going to wash these. Now I am just wiping the rims with vinegar. I don't really think that this is that important because we're not really working with anything sticky, but generally when you're canning, you want to wipe the rims with vinegar to make sure that nothing is going to interfere with the sealing process. And then I'm just adding my new lids here, and then I'm going to put on my bands or my rings finger touch tight. This part is really, really important because you do not want to put your band on too tight. Basically, what finger touch tight is when you start to twist on your band, the second it starts to give you a little bit of give because you need to make it tighter, don't push it very much more. So like you can see here that it starts to give a little bit of that give where it's getting tightened up. And then I do one little notch like turn and then I stop. Then simply place your jars right into the canner. You're gonna put all of them in there, and then you're going to place the lid on the stock pot and allow it to come to a rolling boil. You can see here though that I did have way too much water. I literally couldn't fit any more jars in here. So I had to remove some of the water because otherwise it would have boiled over and literally made a giant mess. This is exactly what you want. You can already see the bubbles are starting to come up out of the jar just from simply being placed in the water. Now you're just gonna put on your lid and turn it on high heat and allow it to come to a rolling boil. This is not quite what we're looking for. We want it to look like this. This is when you start the timer for 15 minutes. I guess I should clarify, 15 minutes for pints and 25 minutes for quarts is the time that you would need to set. Now carefully, please carefully remove it from the stock pot. They are massively hot. I am so serious, so be careful. And make sure that you set it on that towel too, because that temperature change can burst the jar, and allow it to sit undisturbed for 24 hours. It is 24 hours later and we have our jars here and they have rested. So there's a few things that we're gonna need to do here. So the first thing that we're gonna need to do is we're gonna remove the band. And I know some people are like, what do you mean we're gonna remove the band? This was only there in place to hold the lid on while we were water bath canning it. The reason that we need to remove it is because if something happened, like there was a faulty seal and it unsealed itself, if the band was on, it could reseal itself in the cabinet and you would have no idea that it happened. And so therefore it's no longer shelf stable, it's no longer safe for consumption, and it would be trash. When this is off, if for some odd reason that it did unseal itself, you're going to see, because the lid's going to be off and there's not going to be anything on it that's going to provide that pressure to get it to reseal itself. At this point, you'll also be able to see if your lid sealed properly. You can tell because it's dipped down and the button is not pushed out. So you just go ahead and remove all of them. I like to label that mine with the date and what it is, just so I know. So let's pretend for some reason that one of your lids did not seal. You did everything right. You did everything perfect, on point, followed all the instructions, and it just did not seal. It happens sometimes. We don't really know why it happens, but it does. So if it's been sitting for 24 hours, it is safe to be placed in the fridge and ate with, or drank in this case, in 24 hours. If it's been longer, you're gonna wanna toss it. You can reprocess it, which means you put it back, like you take it off, you do it all over again, you put it back in the water bath canner. I just think that that is so difficult. And one canning group that I was in, they said that we call these enjoy them nows, the ones that don't seal. So all of mine did seal, but in case that they didn't or one of them did not, just know that you can consume it within 24 hours. According to the Ball brand, these lids are good for like 18 months or something like that, or 16 months. But to be completely real with you, if it looks good, it smells good, and it tastes good, and the seal is still on, I'll consume this years down the road. One thing that I would really keep in mind is if you're using these cranberries to treat a bladder infection, sugar and infection, they love each other, man. So it's best to eat low sugar and low refined sugar, and we did put white sugar in there, so I would leave that out. And it's going to be so tart, but it's going to work and you're going to feel so much better afterward. Or maybe you do not want to have the juice at all. You're like, look, I do not like cranberry, I don't want to drink that, it's gross, I don't want the flavor. You could do something else as well. You could make a cranberry extract or tincture, and you could take that. That is done with raw cranberries and vodka. And you don't use a lot of the vodka. You literally have like 30 to 60 drops, which is literally less than you would consume if you put vanilla extract in a cookie recipe. So it's literally nothing. But if you want to see how to make that too, I can totally share how to make a cranberry tincture or an extract so that you could take that quickly and easily. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And please, if you have any questions, that's literally what I'm here for, put it in the comments down below and I will do my best to get back to everybody's questions.